We're going to get started now. Bimose Onquit Dijnikaz Atikmikshing Anishinabek Donjnaba Mashkos Dodem. My name is Valerie Riche. I'm from Atikmikshing, and it's a real honor for me to be here this morning to be asked to facilitate this amazing panel. I can just feel the power coming from this table. For the first time in a long time, I feel like one of the cool kids being able to facilitate the group. I just want to really say miigwech to all the chiefs for being here. In case people don't know, we have, this is all the female chiefs from the Robinson-Huron Treaty. I think they're all here. Yes, yeah, amazing, yeah. Maybe what we could do is just go down the road and down the row and ask everyone to just introduce yourselves, like your name and the nation that you represent this morning. We'll start here.
Good morning. My name is Wilma Lee. Can you hear me?
Can we all be on at the same time?
My name is Wilma Lee Johnston. I'm from Serpent River. I'm the deputy chief there. Miigwech.
Barrett, you got to come in.
Good morning.
Mic's on.
Leona Naugabun Dishnikas, Gimakwe, Ogoskinika, Donjba, from Whitefish River, Chief Leona Naugabo.
I'm going to blend in with the tablecloth.
Oh. Good morning. Minut Kajep. I always introduce myself first with my Anishinaabe name I was given, my clan, because we don't know how many spirits or ancestors that are in this room, that are here. And that was our first language. So that's why I always do that. It took me a while, a long time, before I used that name, till I got to understand it. Anyway, with that, minom jagat ganin dishnikas makundo dem. Kima koi wadin dao shibasing. My English name is Irene Kells, and I'm the chief from Shibasing. Miigwech.
Good morning. Patsy Corbier Dijnikaz, Ondek Dominiconing Donjaba, Ogimaak. I'm Patsy Corbier. I'm from the Ondek Dominiconing First Nation on Manitoulin Island, known as AOK.
Bonjour, Minokajet Bagwit, Wasab Indijnakas Sadik Dodem, Chiging Donjaba, Linda Daboski Jognashi knows when, Ogimaak and Dao. My name is Linda Daboski. I'm the elected chief of Chiging First Nation, and I come from the Caribou clan on Nidom Nisig. Watch.
Try again.
Is it on now? Okay, honey. If I were a cynical person, I would say someone's trying to silence Wikwemkong. Honey, bonjour, good morning. Nagijgat nungwa, makwa dodem, minoshni, donishnabe nozwin andanamatkwe. Awan, Jaganashi, Noswin, Rachel, Manitowabi, Mauge, Mendoabe, Winishnave Mang, Gima Kwenda, Oda Wikwemkong, Gitchinendam Nungoshinda Ya. I'm very happy to be here, and it's nice to see so many smiling faces, even though we are talking about treaty. Not the most popular topic at some tables, but for today, we will do our best to inform and provide the information that we can through these very insightful questions that we've been given. Nahaw, miigwech.
Miigwech. I also should thank the elder, Martina, this morning for starting us off in a good way. And thanks to the elders also for being here this morning and for staying to take part in the conversation. I heard this chief from BC once who was talking about keeping speeches short, and he said, if you ask me to speak for more than 10 minutes, it's going to be BS. So I always remember that and thought, try to keep your comments short. But this is a woman's panel, so we're going to do that work in half the time. So we have 2 questions for each chief. And we're going to go for 5 or 6 minutes. We're going to try. I'm going to follow Nelson's lead and say nahaw at when you got 1 minute left, at that 1 minute left mark. I also want to say how powerful it was to see all these students walk in from Shawan and Nosway School. Yeah. So we have a great group this morning, and I think we have a pretty good online presence too. So let's get started. The first question we have for Deputy Chief Will Malee, and this is Treaty Week, and Ontario was the first province to pass this legislation back in 2016. So Will Malee, what has been your experience with Treaty Week, and what are your thoughts? How do you usually spend Treaty Week, and is there something you do during this week?
Okay. So it's truth time. I'm a newly elected member of council, so I don't have a lot of experience with treaty. I'm here to learn and absorb what I can from everybody. As a citizen of the Anishinaabe, I've only read occasional articles coincidentally put out by RHW. While doing my brushing up on treaty knowledge, my thoughts are that there is enough treaty for everyone. We have a lot of different aspects of the treaty. There's cooperation, the lack of and the need for it, land restitution or reclamation, economy, resource sharing, and then human rights. I think learning about treaty rights and responsibilities is important, not only for governments, but for all people. I don't have a vast knowledge of Robinson Huron. I know the basics. What is interesting to me is what the treaty encompasses. So what it was meant to be then and what it means now. The history of the treaty is important, but so is the future of it. After becoming involved in governance in my First Nation, I realized that I've taken part in my own way by continually asserting treaty rights. And by that I mean my involvement in land stewardship and protecting the land. Showing up and learning are all part of our individual responsibilities as Anishinaabe and as human beings. So that goes for all people. Indigenous people worldwide represent 4% of the population, but 80% of protection movements start with Anishinaabe or Indigenous people throughout the world. So that's a startling number when you consider the demographics. But it demonstrates the commitment of our people to the land and asserting our treaty rights and the responsibilities that come with those. This week, as my first role as a leader in governance, I'll be meeting with the grade 7 and 8s in Elliott Lake, and we'll be talking about the treaty. And I think my message to them is that treaties are made between nations, nation to nation, and that recognizing treaty is important to land stewardship and the protection of the land and to all people. Miigwech.
Miigwech. So we'll carry on and we'll go to Gama now Gabo And what are your thoughts about Treaty Week, and where should we be headed with Treaty Week in the future? How would you like to see this Treaty Week evolve?
Good morning. Eje kend mage ni manda treaty is ne kadek kibe kogni wa manda kogi kedok ambe shonya we mean dem nongo kenogo ya gijita we ne kenege gogi jis jagade mino benoji kenogo enchat imaji jagazo go de shonya wa kominding skem no komekoge ni nwengi min go me o de shonya non chukuna pi koneganing maji jagade we shonya na ket konene no git go gabuok Geni nresh go kmisnanik kenoge no endasyang nuichke nanik go de no go giyaok nishnabek kanadap kwejik nadap kwem kidam go jage gumzen magoin mishka joeba kwepi shonya minding kimzen mago mewe Bem gishetag de jemin gome, nongo migo gaben yobek minding. Charge na dagi giknega de bamanda. Mino de bajmok, kajak chipiten dago keginwe manda edna kieng. Skakmik kwe, kenogo gego gimna dinjgade. Migajim madzing, gipa madzyok nishnabek, gimajin gome kogeninwe. We ba min kyang, we ba mojgen mang, wajem nobjetung, we nem nab madsing. We go san gegi mandon gadenon, wingash, kenogo gego wajem nobjetung, gi manjitgade. Minor gegin tak te geo we pinishnabek, when the chigaman angabriaje give him pina and bejogin jekonge. Me we comes in the magoing. Gabe when go miss in the mago me. Gabi kadash kod bagesio. Me kajim kod tausat kokchinish nabe. Gabi ka dash kod bagesio kondak chigimanang. Nick mes nageat. Mino manda nongo skakmekwe en go kamga kinwe de bench game me mampi. Kinwe the noin dause me we the magoing we. Mi manda nongo chedvak ne digam gongen chedvat chegade neke nishnabe meznamoin. I will talk about the experience of Treaty Day. The whole family would get ready for Treaty Day, and usually where I came from, it was in the springtime. Shkemaji yingegu, the new growth. Migajin katmuat. Mino Treaty Day kidang. We're collecting the money that's owed to us. Migake dwad get your pizzajik. Ka we ka wanda dashkod bagesio. There will never be an end to these payments coming to us. Although it was only $4 at the time, and it's still $4. And they believe that so much more is owed to us because we're getting cornered into living in small spaces. All of that treaty territory is ours, and it will never be finished paying for the value of that land. And we look at how the environment is being damaged, and they talked about that. They said our livelihood comes from the land. And Jonia kidang, ne joshka bide, kaimam snopane, mandashrigo, we will always have this earth for us to walk on, but the money, it just slips through our hands. So therefore, we need to speak up for our environment, Mother Earth, and that we have to talk for our future generations, 7 generations ahead of us. We have to make those decisions that will impact future generations coming after us. And talking about the language, we were robbed of our language, our values that were given to us. And the school systems as it is, as long as it's out of our control, we're going to have a difficult time teaching the language to our children because When I was growing up, that's all I heard day after day. And we're able to translate even modern technology with our language. The language has to be held because it's close to who we are as Nishnabek. And that's what they said on Treaty Day. Panego, Nishnabek, Danegigdog, Miigwech.
Miigwech. We'll move on to Chief Kells. Gimmick Kells, as a chief, with regards to work, what's keeping you busy? What's taking a lot of your time now at your council table or at your desk? What treaty work is keeping you busy, and how often do treaty issues come up?
I guess it comes up now and then. There's no special time or day that we decide to talk about our treaties. And it only happens when something is happening that's not going right and it relates to them treaties. And yeah, it can be cumbersome because we're very small and a lot of work. There are not enough workers to help do the work that's supposed to be done. It's the researching of these treaties that takes a while. But in the end, when you do find what you're looking for, there's a lot of information there, a lot of stuff to say, oh, that's me, I'm a Anishinaabe, and that's my right, the right to hunt, the right to fish, right to the land. And there's, like you heard this morning, I missed half of it. There's a lot of teachings that I think the young people, they have to get into learning these the traditions, the land, what it's all about, and how to understand it. I think I heard one elder talk about being connected to the earth. That's so true. Our ancestors a long time ago knew exactly what medicine we were to use for diabetes, whatever it is that we had. They knew because they could talk to the plants. They understood that. And that still happens today. There is a lot of people out there yet that can do that. And so understanding these treaties will explain what it is that government wants us to believe that they're helping us with. But as you go through the treaties and you really look at them and you look at the teachings of your culture, you'll get to understand they're missing a lot of stuff there. And doing research on the treaties, it's all out there. There's all kinds of stuff out there. It takes time, but that's good time that you spent to hear something more, a little bit something more. This treaty week here is a good thing. It's a good time for people to get together and make this, every year, make it happen. Maybe next year it could be something like this with a lot of our younger people can come out together in the summertime or something, when they can come out together. Them are the ones that we need to teach is these young people. Because they're the ones that are lost. They're the ones that don't understand. It's amazing out there. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in a hairdresser's, and my hairdresser knows who I am, that I am the chief, and she's always asking me questions. And She wants to know about the Anishinaabe people. So I would tell her. But the one thing that she said there and asking me questions, oh, so all them, the drugs must be really bad over there where all them murders are happening. What? I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I said, and I did ask, what are you talking about? That's how they see us. See, they see us in that light. They do not see the Anishinaabe people in the history that we have, the spirit power that we have, that we depend on. They do not see that. They just see them alcohol and drugs. Oh, I see, she'd say. And that's how they perceive us. We need to teach our young children how to be proud to say, I am Anishinaabe, I am Anishinaabe. And we need to get out there and promote this, really promote it. I heard another person sitting around in a hairdresser. I'm not always there. I only go there when I can. But I was just listening to them, and I know this one lady there. I know she's Anishinaabe, but she looks really, really fair, eh? And this other lady was sitting over there, and she says, "Oh, guess what? I'm my daughter's making a ribbon skirt." And the lady says, "Oh, nice." And she said, "But what is a ribbon skirt?" I says, "Lady, you're from Espanola. You've lived here all your life. You don't know what a ribbon skirt is. I mean, who doesn't go to Powell's? Her, I guess. Not to know what a ribbon skirt is. But that's the ignorance that is out there. They do not know what we have. They do not know about these treaties. They may hear about them on the news now and then. I love them signs that are out on the highway. I want one in my community. But we have to start letting the public know who we are and what do we stand for. I mean, we're doing great strides right now with this governance initiative that we're all taking on. This is the time I'm taking to get my elders and our teachings out there as we're talking about governance, so we can understand this land, so we can understand why and how can we make these changes in our communities. Not to copy that Shogunash, but to have our own real connection to them trees. Real connection to that water. And it's so important. I cannot stress that enough. There's another question I was going to be asked. What was the last thing?
I'll come back to you for the next one.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I can get carried away here.
Miigwech. So here's another question, but this time we're going to go to Gama Manitowabi. And it's a question I kind of always wanted to ask. Your community has the largest treaty population, but at the same time has always been proud of being an unceded First Nation. Can you explain how you have treaty beneficiaries and how you're able to represent those differing treaty perspectives?
Is this still on? It
Yep.
is. Well, you're a brave lady to ask that question. You identified a rule of Nahau for my 1 minute, and it's a Nelson Toulouse rule. And he forgot his laptop at the hotel, and the hotel clerk let me know that there was a Nelson Toulouse who forgot his laptop, which made me late. So when you say Nahau, I'm going to say Beka, because I may need to say more on behalf of delivering that laptop. I will. Thank you. So it's a huge question that you've given to me, and 6 minutes to answer, so I will do my best. So Wikwemkong has always been Proud of its unceded status, and we continue to do so today, and we will always be proud of who we are as an unceded territory. In terms of Wikwemkong's history, we have, to answer the question, we have not only Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850, but we also have the 1836 Bond-Head Treaty, and then we also have the 1862 Manitoulin Treaty in Wikwemkong. We also represent 3 tribes of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, and we call this our Three Fires Confederacy. So in Wikwemkong's history, we have these 3 treaties that are important to us. So in more recent times, Robinson-Huron has taken the stage with its annuities claim and the litigation that's before us right now. We all know that 1836 Bond-Head Treaty set aside Manitoulin for the Odawa people and for the Anishinaabe of the day. So it was also set aside for the Anishinaabe generally, but it was the Odawa people that populated Manitoulin, and this is why it's known in historical records as Odawa Minis. So we had, because we're a Three Fires Confederacy, we had Ojibwe people on the mainland, so not on the island, and that's where they hunted and they fished. The Odawa people used Odawa Minis, and then the Potawatomi people came from the Michigan area and southwestern Ontario. So when we came together as a confederacy, because of the issues that were going on with colonization, because of government persecution of Anishinaabe people, Ojibwe people, Odawa people, and Potawatomi people came to live together on the island. And Odawa people being kind, Odawa people being just like other Anishinaabe, were welcoming in this way and recognized what the government was doing to the Anishinaabe people. So because we have these 3 treaties, Robinson-Huron Treaty being one of them, the more significant of the 3 treaties has been the 1862 Manitoulin or McDougall Treaty. And that's where Wikwemkong gets its basis for being unceded. Because we had other tribal affiliations with us. We had intermarriages between the 3 tribes, and they all came to settle in Wikwemkong. And the principal men, the representatives of Wikwemkong at the time, refused to sign the 1862 treaty. And so that's why we're unceded, and that's why Wikwemkong has always held that treaty in major significance for us. The other reason why we have treaty and non-treaty people in Wikwemkong is because of the INAC registration process. So depending on where or how you were registered, whether it be your mother or your father, it determined whether you were status and whether you were treaty or not. I can give an example of myself. I'm non-treaty. I was registered under my father. Manitowabi has generally been a non-treaty family in our history, and so being registered in the band list under my father makes me non-treaty Anishinaabe. My mother was treaty, and when she married my father, the government extinguished her treaty status, and so she wasn't entitled to collect the annuity annually. And she was promised a $200 payout by the government upon marrying my father, which she never received.
Now how?
Becca. So that example is how we have treaty and non-treaty people in our registration. It's INAC's birth registration process. So had I been registered under my mother, I would have been a treaty individual. Had she not married my father, she would still be treaty. as I was going through some of this information yesterday, I happened to be talking with a relative of mine, John Manitowabi, who's our lands director. And he's also non-treaty. He married a treaty woman from Wikwemkong, and she thought that her treaty right was extinguished as well from having married John. She found out through our membership office that she still, in fact, does have her treaty status, but their children were registered under their mother. So his children are treaty. And so because of that lack of awareness at the time of registration, and this is something that everyone should look into when, and tell everyone in your communities that, you know, if you're treaty or non-treaty and you want to have your children represented by one or the other, then you should investigate and find out from your membership office. So John has non-treaty children. His wife maintains her treaty status. Their children have treaty status. And of course, this whole story wouldn't be something that we can talk about without having a little bit of humor in it. So John says that he has Ojidawa Badawadami kids. So that's, I hope, helps clarify why we have a great number of treaty Nishnabek in our territory while we maintain our unceded status.
Miigwech. That was really informative. Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. I'm not sure if I should ask, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you think if you had been a male chief, you would have been asked to be delayed to bring Nelson's computer this morning? Okay, never mind. Don't answer.
I think so, but I probably would have said, let him pick it up himself.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next question to Gama Patsy Corbier. So this is a women's leadership panel run as part of Treaty Week, so I feel compelled to ask you this question. As a woman leader in a treaty partnership with mostly male chiefs, what's that like?
Oh, yes, you got to hear this story. No. Well, anyway, I don't see no difference in leadership of male and female until I became chief. So I was on council for 18 years. I learned a lot of leadership through that time. My brother was chief for 17 years, so me and him argued all the time. And because he was always right, I was always wrong. But we had council sitting on this side of the three on this side, three on this side, and sometimes, most of the time, they sided with what I was saying. To be a leader, you have to do research, you have to do you have to know what you're talking about when you're trying to push your agenda item through a council. You can't just go there blindfolded like I'm doing today, so I'm trying to talk a little bit slower so I can get in my 6 minutes. So part of the treaty partnership is how you yourself, and the elders spoke of that, they speak from the heart. You speak of how you're going to do business. Being a leader is not about power. And through times that I've been on leadership, it is about power. And people think that once they became chief, they have all that power. Well, power doesn't mean nothing if you're not servicing your people. So part of as a chief, a woman chief, and I heard this when I was getting on a plane in Winnipeg when an elder turned around and said to me, didn't know me from a hole in the ground, and said, the only way you're going to fix this country is if you start electing women chiefs. And if you really actually look at what's going on in the country, other than Elsie Nod, who was the first woman chief in Canada in 1954, you see these turnarounds in a lot of these First Nations where women are getting back in as chiefs. A woman would never run for council. A woman would never run for chief. That was kind of like a no-no in the time frames that I don't know if we were just seen as weak. We were seen as weak with government because, you know, nobody, if you look at the treaties, there wasn't women there that negotiated those treaties. It was all men dominated. I'm very proud of these women that are sitting here today. A majority of them are from Manitoulin, the acting chief from Serpent River. It takes a lot of guts to stand forward and to be a chief. There's lots of stuff. I haven't had a pretty life as a chief since 2011. I've had a lot of difficulties, actually. But the people that if you build your relationships with your community, you'll get that support as they vote and they vote and vote. Men have ran, two men have ran actually in all my elections. But it's the point of how you act and how you treat people. Being a leader, that's what I said, is not about power. It's what you can do and how you can communicate. How you can do things in a positive way that's going to affect the whole community. Every woman that's sitting in here, every man, you are all leaders. This elders group, if you look at it, they're balanced over there, and that's part of leadership, of having women and men sitting on a group like that, that you all have different perspectives of what you, the women may come at a different approach, and the men may come at a different approach, but at the end of the day, that balance is sitting at those committees. You look at those youth, Bonnie, and your group that you brought today, you look at the difference in how you brought people here. And when they go back to their community, that's what you teach them from a young age. And when we were young, there was a lot of sexual abuse and all these things that women today, we should be in the grave because of the things that we've had to endure as women, not even just as a chief. And there was a difference when I first started as chief of how you were treated, because they didn't expect women to get in as chiefs because it wasn't about power. So when you took that down to another level of not about power and started building your community, because when I became chief, it was about building community wellness. People were fighting, people were angry, people didn't get along, they never spoken to each other in years. But part of that building of that community wellness in a community is about making people happy. We can build all the buildings we want in the community, but if we don't have community wellness, you have nothing in the community. And that's how I've tried to work on AOK, tried to instill that in the councils. That's why I said the treaty partnership is about how you can respect each other, how you can put that balance into place, how you can bring those children up, not like they were 30, 40 years ago, where people went through a lot of trauma and you get a lot of sickness. Yes, we've gone through the COVID pandemic, and we're dealing with the mental wellness of the community right now because of the restrictions you had. You're locked in your home, people were fear-mongered, but the leader had to stay together. Leaders can't fall apart today. They have to stay, even women chiefs. And when I used to go to the AFN, I was ashamed. And a lot of those political levels is because people lined up to talk at the mic. Majority of them were men. When a woman got up to speak about the issue that was at hand of that resolution, that's when people would go for coffee. And they wouldn't listen to those women. And those women had a lot to say. And the worst time I had is when we were dealing with murdered Indigenous women. And they had a great big flag thing over there that all the chiefs had to sign in when they got in the door. And that was about supporting, helping people that are being in those families that have murdered Indigenous people dead, even boys today. But when that speaker went up to the front of the lady that went up to speak about that, the only people that were in that room were women. There was no men there, yet they just signed a declaration that they were going to support and listen to what was being said in that room. So people have to not just have lip service as chiefs. These chiefs need to come together. I get along with all the chiefs that I have because I was on council and I know those same chiefs. A lot of them are still there. There's a lot of new chiefs. Rachel's a new chief. And we all hold her up. We hold up the acting chiefs, right? We can't walk away from those people that they're not left alone. And we see that at the AFN. You see women chiefs sitting all by themselves somewhere. Well, you won't sit beside them. And you stick together and you do that. But men all cluster in one group over there. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a balanced approach to how you deal with leadership issues that are on the table, the environment. And part of everything that we're doing with these treaties, people didn't enforce those treaties. We're going through a 1990 land claim treaty, the modern day treaty that was signed in 1990. It's 31 years later. The land we bought with that money, we still can't use it. We're subject to taxation on those properties, which we signed an agreement said we weren't. But if we don't have that force of that balance coming forward to make sure that we're standing together, you can't have one person standing by themselves over there and they have no support. So my expectations of my community is that they stand behind me and they support what we're doing in building that community wellness and building that strong Anishinaabe community. We lost our language too. But this is what I said, it is because we grew up close to a municipality. We went to municipality schools. We had a day school on the community that you couldn't speak the language. You were beat all the time there, beaten down. But you know what? We have to move forward. We can't live in the past. We have to start moving forward. And most of communities want to stay in the past, depress themselves, talk about all these things that have happened to them. But you know what? Your kids are growing up. My grandson said, well, Grandma, you have to be chief forever. Oh, no, I'm not going to be chief forever, right? I can only go so far. And I asked him, why are you asking that? Well, because we may be poor if you're not chief anymore. Well, that's not a reason why you want me to be chief. I struggle. I have lots of work. And every time I leave the house, they're asking, where are you going, Grandma? I'm going to a meeting, right? Oh, geez, you go to too many meetings. You need to stay home. But then you look at the thing where they're saying, well, you need to be chief then, right? So men should not be higher than women. They should be equal. So that's my message.
Miigwech. So we'll move on to Gamad Dabasage. Can you answer the same question? What has your experience been as a woman chief? Do you have advice for someone who's thinking about running for chief in their community?
So you're asking me more questions than Gimla Kwai Corbier? Well, how do I follow Gimla Kwai Corbier? I became elected as chief in my community in 2015. It was a great while prior to my election that a woman held the position. I've only been the second woman to hold this position in my community. I was raised, and I was listening to the panel before in terms of our presentation on the traditional knowledge piece. I really related to being, or to the thought of being educated at home first, and then being educated in an educational system. And why I say that is, I was raised by a family who has held our oral history very strong and very proudly for our family and also for our community. And I was raised with my great-great-grandfather being chief, great-grandfather being chief, grandfather being chief, and uncles. And so that perspective has ran through my family for quite some time, and even before 1862. So with that being said, I've learned about my treaty and my family, and my family spans across Ontario and into the U.S., so we have a long lineage there. And throughout that time and that learning at home, there was never a hierarchy of men and women. It was not like that between my parents, my grandparents, my families, my extended family. There was always an equal balance in life. Everyone had their responsibility, and when my grandfather passed, my grandmother took the role of chopping wood, doing the garden, doing everything she needed to do with the support of her sons. And similar to when my own mother passed when I was only 18, my dad took care of my sister and I, my younger sister and I. So he learned how to make bread, he learned how to make cake, but he also reminded us that we do have to pick up responsibilities here and there to move forward. And so when I became the elected leader, I didn't have fear to work with other male colleagues. I was actually, just before I became an elected leader, I was actually running a backhoe, a dump truck, an excavator, and I was actually working in the bush. So it was a wonderful time back then. I was also 50 pounds lighter. But at that point, that's where I found that there is a balance similar to what Gimla Corbier was talking about. And as I became accustomed and learning to this role and this responsibility, that I did create relationships, collegial relationships with other male chiefs, and I think they quickly found that they can't push me around, bully me, or otherwise. And to this day, some of the male chiefs I've worked with will say, "Don't upset Chief Linda." You know, and other times we'd be in a different type of caucus, and we would be talking about something, and some of the men would say, "Well, we should say this." Well, who's going to say it? And it just crickets. I said, "Well, I'll go up and say it." And so I did. And it was almost like, "Whoa, she said it. What do I got to lose, right?" So I think my experience just as a chief has come with a significant amount of challenges. It's come with a significant amount of rewards. Weight gain, I talked about that already. Lack of sleep, constant stress, constant worry about the people in my community I love and beyond. Sleepless nights, and constant thinking about the community. And I think the greatest sacrifice being my family. And so when I think about my experience, and in the last year I recently become a grandmother as well. So I'm blessed with that, and a new mother as well, again. What I've realized is that in my own experience, I feel that I am just that, a mother for my community, because I care about everybody, no matter which band member comes up and swears in my face and makes all these crazy accusations without learning to listen or seeking that knowledge, right? I have to be patient with that. I have to be kind to that. Although I don't deserve that treatment, I have to understand where our people have come from, through oppression, through colonization, through different abuses that have been experienced by our people. So being very compassionate to that, just like a mother and a grandmother would. The constant worry I have for my community is the constant worry I have for my own son, my little girl, my grandson, and all of my family. So I just feel that it's a huge responsibility involving more and more people. And to take that, I have to always remember to be kind for myself. But in my experience, I've had to work harder. I've had to prove myself even more. I've had to be able to debate with men. And at times I've felt sexism around my community, around my council table, the councillors I work with. And I have to address that. Because what would all the other little girls need me to do to continue to have room for them to come forward? And lastly, the advice I have for someone who is thinking about running for chief in their community, don't think of it as you're at the top. Never, ever do that. You have to put your people first, no matter what. I work 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days. I get a day off on a leap year, or I work an extra day on a leap year, something like that. But I think that you can't promise anything. The only promise you can make is to work hard, be honest, and do the next best thing every day. Because being a chief doesn't give you veto power in your community. You have to work with a council who is representative of your community. And why I say that at times, there are times my council makes a decision that I don't personally agree with. But I also have to respect what they say as they are to the voice of the community. So the power rests in the council as a collective, but the biggest power is with the community. And I don't think there should be fear of our community to be able to share advice and guidance. And I think the last most significant piece of advice is to take care of your spirituality. Take the time to go to ceremonies. Take the time to smudge when you wake up and when you go to bed at night. Take that time to pray with your family as well. Because without your family, you're nothing. Without your community, you're nothing. And without your spirituality, we will falter. Miigwech.
Miigwech. So we'll go to Gamanawagabo next.
Miigwech. First of all, I'd like to thank Earl for the tobacco ties that he handed out to the women. I want to go back to when I first moved to Waugoskiniga. My husband and I married over 65 years. And when I moved there, I just started to live the way I was brought up, help people. We used to live off the land, and I was made to watch the whole gathering on the land where we camped out during the summer. And my grandmother had said that non ko do kwe kanajin kas mi gajin kas at gaining get chugo komisaba pa makanich kendan edmingwe. Your name is going to be Clear Sky Woman. You will find out later in life why that name is given to you. It was from a relative of yours that knew how to help people. I'm a great-grandmother. I have 2 great-grandsons. And when I moved to Waugoskiniga, I worked in housing, in recreation, education, parish council, and forever going off to learn about how to benefit the people in my community. Eventually, I got elected on council and stayed there for 12 years and eventually got elected as chief. I was the first woman chief on Manitoulin Island to be elected. And I was also elected as the president of the Ontario Native Women's Association because they were going through a very tough time. They wouldn't be able to speak at chiefs' assemblies because women weren't allowed to speak there. And if you were a chief, you were allowed to go to the mic. And so therefore, I was speaking for those women that wanted to tell their story. And later on as well, I became elected as the Grand Chief for Robinson Huron. And those are the paths that we walk. Once you start helping people, you are seen as the one to benefit those that don't have a voice. And today, I'm sitting as chief again. People wanted me to go back and talk about my experience. When I first was elected as chief, it was at a very difficult time. Our single moms weren't seen to be deserving a house. And I spoke up for them at council meetings. And I became elected as a council at the time because I was speaking for those that wouldn't be listened to. And once that our council made changes to the way they saw our families, I had to drive that into the council tables to be recognized that women do have families. They do have fathers, those children. And I brought that up. I said, those children have 2 parents, male and female. Eventually, they did get on the housing list and were able to get their homes. Those are colonized thinking that were in the minds of the people around the council tables. Today, it's much different. And I think that those are the better changes that have taken as we walk through life. We need to be the reminders. The women are the voice of those that can't be heard. Today, being on council, we want to hear everybody's voice. I felt that sometimes being on council table, I wouldn't be listened to because of the male dominancy around the table. But today, I think that we need to keep our ears open so that everybody is heard. Everybody has experience, and I've said that. Everybody has walked through life with sometimes successfulness, and sometimes there are hardships that come to our people that walk on their path of life. I worked with Gord Wendevins and our elders to come up with the Anishinaabe. Those are very powerful words. We are one big family. Naha miwe.
So I see we're running out of time and lunch is coming. So maybe what I'll ask the panel to do is to go to 4 minutes on the second round of questions, if we can. So we'll go now to Deputy Chief Johnson. It's often said that we're all treaty people, and as such, we all have treaty responsibilities, including our non-Indigenous neighbors. What do you think is the biggest misconception from our non-Indigenous neighbors regarding their treaty obligations that you would like to get straight right now?
Okay, so I think the biggest misconception is that treaty is about money. Money is a factor, but I think that, as I touched on earlier, a big part of treaty recognition is restoring balance to the land. Land reclamation is a major part of treaty, and again, there's something for everyone. In Canada, we represent 5% of the population. Reserve land accounts for 6.3% of Canada's land mass. So in this 6%, this includes land that's already set aside for future land claim settlements. And as we know, under the Indian Act, reserve land is owned by the government. So land reclamation doesn't mean give us our land back. That would be nice. Though it means return us the responsibilities of stewardship to the land, to protecting the land, to making economic decisions that benefit all people, not just sectors of people. Land reclamation means restoring the land that has been degraded by human use and abuse. Absolutely, we would love our land back. That would work. But really, I think a more practical view is a joint partnership between our governments, or as an eternal optimist that I am, I would hope we would someday hold oversight over the Canadian government and any resource extraction agreements and environmental protection. So the misconception for me is that land claims, land reclamation, the land back movement is only about the appetite for land. To me, it is more than that. When people shut down or learn only what supports their narrative, they do a disservice to themselves as well as others. Land is about sustainability, wellness, connection, and then the economy last. So if you are into protecting the land, then learn about treaty. And if you're about health or wellness, harvesting, hunting, or the economy, learn about treaty. In that way, you can broaden your knowledge and understanding of how things were and how they should be.
Miigwech. We'll go to Ogimaak, Manitowabi. What do you wish more people understood about our treaty?
I think that I'd like people to know more generally about treaty is that prior to it, Anishinaabe people, Indigenous people, were seen as military allies across Turtle Island. And when we were helping with the different conflicts and wars, we were seen as equals. Once the government started to take numbers, started to see us as a list, that's when the paternalism began and it was introduced. And we still live with that paternalism today. What I would like to know what I would like for people to know about treaty is that before you look at reading the text of treaty, it has to be understood that it's not a surrender of land or extinguishment of land. It's about a shared relationship, how we will share the resources. And in return, we will get a certain amount of repayment for that, equitable repayment. So for the use of the land that was given to the Anishinaabeg by the Creator, all of this land. We just heard that reserves represent 6% of the land in the country, and at one time it was 100%. When you look at that disparaging number, that's where treaty comes into play, and the relationship of shared prosperity is what needs to be the foundation of the understanding of treaty. I think the other thing that also needs to be a primer or a precursor to reading or understanding Robinson-Huron Treaty is the Royal Proclamation. And so when you look at the King laying claim to these 13 colonies and that any other land shall only go through the Crown so that the Indians of the land shall not be molested in any way. That's when that paternalism began to enter the minds and in the relations between the Anishinaabe people and the government. But they cannot deny that we've helped them in different conflicts and different military ways. And so as the first people here, we were a nation. We are a nation. We look at one another as nations now in these tracts of land that were artificially created by the government. So I think that it's important for everyone to go and look at the government as the other side of the nation-to-nation relationship in Crown Indigenous relations. And what I would like people to know as well is that treaty affects us every day. When you have a band council meeting and they're asking questions about, can we fix this road? Can we look at the different laws that we need to implement in our community? Those laws require enforcement, and enforcement requires funding. We need the treaty relationship to be honored so that we can continue in our own traditional form of governance. And at the core of that governance is our land and our connection to it. Miigwech.
Miigwech. We'll go to Ogimaak Corbier. In your opinion, what do you think our communities should be doing to prepare for a win right now on our treaty annuities case?
So before I answer that question, I'd like just to acknowledge the chair of the litigation committee, which is Mike Rastool, and Peter Reckley is here. He's one of the directors, those two guys over there. And Leroy Bennett for our traditional advisor. You know, the litigation committee was started in 2012, and I'm part of the litigation committee, and I'm a plaintiff in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Annuities case. So are those guys over there in the committee itself. So we've been working hard to push this case forward with the legal counsel and giving advice to them, and I think they're doing a really great job over there. And Mike's the chair, and I'm really proud of the accomplishments where this case is headed. Whatever your lawyer says, it's a 50-50 roll of the dice. So every time we ask in these cases, in any case that we're in, it's always the same answer, right? But the Robinson-Huron Treaty case has been doing very well. I don't want to put the eggs before the cart. But the issue with this case is that I think people need to understand that's the issue. So what we're seeing through, and they know I'm on this litigation committee, let's just say AOK for instance, and I know these other guys have had the same issues, where people think we want this all distributed under a per capita basis. That's not going to help the communities if you're doing that. I can see giving a per capita, but it's going to be up to each individual First Nation how that money is being distributed. We got more battles to fight. We want to develop a war chest that there's claims out there that we could all be fighting. You know, there's the environmental. You're talking about the spraying, the aerial spraying. That's a fight. And we got to look at all those types of things. So when we're looking at it as a community First Nation, and I'm hearing it for months and months now that they want it all distributed. But I think what we should be doing is looking at that corporate structure, even though we don't want to be in a government corporate structure, about a trust account, forming a trust committee, getting the advice from legal counsels, how we can start spending that money, but we don't know yet it's not the end of this case yet. So we're prematurely, if that was the case, people would, we would look at the infrastructure. We did a $136 million gap in infrastructure that we need in our community. Mostly all the First Nations did that. So that's a guideline for what needs to be done in the communities. We need a school, we need a new daycare. All those things could be laid out on the table, but until this case is settled and we have that final nod of how we're going to do it, then that's the way you're going to start being prepared. Because if we lose this case, we're screwed. And I don't see we're going to. I have every faith in this case that it's going to be won because of where we won. We fought battles with Ontario, and Canada is not the argument. It's the Ontario government that's taken us to task. And I think we've jumped over every hurdle that we've had to do. But starting the process in a community might be not a good thing. It can turn sour on you pretty quick because of the demands of the people, right? We just came out of a pandemic. People have mental health. They want money. We have a drug addiction problems in our communities that we can't hide. And that's what a lot of the chiefs deal with. Linda talks about 24/7. I get calls all night about overdoses and things in our community. We had an overdose a couple of weeks ago. But is that what we want to do? Give them more money so they can buy more drugs, right? So we have to seriously look at the community as a whole, where we're going, and we need to get people looking at the future of the community, not just looking at today that you're getting $1 billion here and you're going to just waste it and not have anything for your kids. So that's the really, really hard thing to deal with, is because people just want cash flow, right? They don't want anything, right? They don't want to look at 10 years from now. But as leaders, we have to look at that. And they will be bucking us all the way because they're already doing that, right? Yeah. So I don't have a solution to that problem right now. So,
Miigwech. Gema Debasage, what would you like to see happen next with regards to our treaty? What's the logical next step for us?
Miigwech, Valerie. I don't feel that this is a question I can answer all on my own. It is more of I think a conversation that needs to be had with our leadership and members of all of our communities. One of the biggest things I've seen happening over the last couple of years in relation to this particular litigation piece around the annuity is that many members of even my community or colleagues I have in other communities are simply asking, when are we going to get the money? Without understanding or learning about how this has come about, similar to what Ogimaak Manitoba spoke of. I think it's important from a personal perspective that we, number one, really think about different and creative ways to educate our children so that they can carry this knowledge with them into the future. And why I say that is because it's not part of a mandatory curriculum, and most of our children are being educated in non-Indigenous institutions that fail to recognize Indigenous people and their inherent rights to Turtle Island, even beyond the borders. We also need to ensure that the work that has been started by our elders in many different ways, shapes, and forms. Ogimaak Naugabo spoke of the work my friend and the late Shika started doing with our Elders Council on Manitoulin, and the ceremonies and teachings he gave to all of us. And I think about the work that Leroy has been doing this whole time and carrying that message not only here in Ontario but across Canada. And I really think that needs to continue to happen. And after this litigation is completed, I think Leroy and his team and his family should come around to all of our communities regularly and to be able to teach our young ones how to learn about these ceremonies and in order to conduct them into the future. To me, I think this current litigation is really only related to the annuity amount. We're forgetting a lot of the broader pieces, and that's the conversation that needs to happen. It links in with the preservation and protection of land, water, resources, because without all of that, the money we may get might not matter in the next 10, 15, 20 years. From an environmental perspective, what we are seeing today is as a result of what decisions and what human actions were done 50 years ago, and we're just feeling the impacts now. So I will tell you today, climate change is going to get worse. We need to do more as a collective and as a treaty people. Together, we need to unify. We have to put into our minds and to our children so they can carry this on, that sometimes we need to take away our borders to understand that we're related. For example, at one time I had a cousin who was the elected chief of Shegowanda and a cousin that was elected chief of Ogimaak. So our families are all interconnected, and we need to put away those lines that were imposed on us by colonization and a colonial government, to understand that we need to work together. We need to share everything together, because if we keep taking care of our little box, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter for my great-great-grandchild. So we really have to take that seriously. We have to listen to our elders better. And we can't just keep chasing the money, because money isn't always going to solve. Yes, it's going to help, but it's not going to solve or prepare any of us, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren for the future, and all we're going to do is dishonor our ancestors. So number one, we need to honor our ancestors, their hard work, their trials, tribulations they went to. We need to educate our children. We need to decolonize ourselves and amongst our community and our people and get together in more of a united front. And number four, together we can determine that where we will go from here, because everybody will have an opinion, and until we get together to have that conversation with all of our people, we can't do that alone in isolation. And to always remind our children, our colleagues, that we have a role and responsibility here that was given to us by the Creator. We won't know what that is until we start our journey back home. But even, before treaties, we had a responsibility. And we had these rights. But at times today, all we hear is, I have this right, but they forget about the responsibility even of sustainability and environmental stewardship. So we have to reteach that. So, miigwech.
Miigwech. We have the last question for Ogimaak Hells. We've got some young people in the room, and you have the last word. So what would you like to say to them? Do you have any messages for the next generation of our youth?
Okay. I like the sound of that. I can have the last word. That's what I say at home. No. I have the last word. Bojomi no. Ani. Just a little language lesson here, if you haven't heard it before. Our language today is been watered down, or it's been changed and shortened in what the language is supposed to really be. So here's one good one. When you say honey, what do you think you're saying? Honey. What am I saying? You're saying hi, hello. No. You're addressing to the spirits and the Creator. That's me. Nin. Nin. When I first heard that, I thought, that's ever awesome. So when I use that word ani, I remember that it's me that is talking and acknowledging whoever, hey? The Creator, the spirits. Little lesson. I always enjoy talking to the young people at home. I try and get them involved in what's happening. Next week will be the Chiefs of Ontario. I'm not going to Toronto for that meeting. I'm going to go on Zoom. And now that they're not in school, I'm going to hopefully have them all in the back room in the office with a little bribe to get them to sit and listen for the next 3-4 days on what the Chiefs of Ontario have to say. I did that with them with the June UOI meeting. Or was it Chiefs of Ontario? Chiefs of Ontario. And that was quite a little group. And it was really interesting how they sat up and they just listened. They actually moved a couch around on me. I don't know when they did that. But the couch used to be against the wall. They moved it right in front of the TV. So they were sitting there in front of the TV and, watching intensely. And I noticed that the young people are really eager to hear things, to hear different stories and different things. And I try and make that inviting for them when I tell them about, this is what the Chiefs are doing. This is what they're going to be talking about. Would you like to go? And somebody would always say, yeah, I'll go. But it's really important that the young people talk with each other in what they hear from the elders, the panel up here, the chiefs, or any chief, any elder. When you hear of elders' gatherings, which we used to have a long time ago, I would always go to them, always. And that's where I learned a lot of things when I was a teenager.
Now.
So guys, be proud to be Anishinaabe clan, Anishinaabe Ninnis. And, there's a lot of utilities, a lot of people you can talk to about looking at yourself and feeling good. So you have a good day. Omapi.
Miigwech. I would just like to, as a last word, thank all the chiefs for coming out this morning, this afternoon. Miigwech.